Hi everyone, this is Mike with the Astro Explorers, and I'll be walking you through stacking, stretching, and editing Messier 20. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and open Deep Sky Stacker. Inside of Deep Sky Stacker, we'll bring in our different frames so that we can stack them into one image. For the Trifid Nebula, I do have 35 frames that we're going to be able to stack. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to Open Picture Files. It's going to bring up the location for my file. If it doesn't bring up the location on yours because you've not loaded it once before, you'll need to go ahead and search for it. But I'm going to click from top one all the way to the bottom one, and I'm going to go ahead and bring in my files. You'll see them show up here down in the file list. Then I'm going to go to my dark files, and I'm going to bring these in. So again, just click on the top one, shift click on the bottom. That'll select all your files. You can click open. It adds them to your frames here, and you can see that they're coming in checked. Then I'm going to bring in my flat files. This is going to be used to help get rid of some of those dust motes and the gradients. I'm going to open that, and then I'm going to bring in my offsets. Again, just clicking on the top, shift clicking on the bottom one to select all the files and opening them. And then you'll notice that several of them are not checked, and instead of going through here and checking or unchecking the ones that we are going to use, I'm going to go ahead and come over here and choose check all. Now we're going to go ahead and click on register checked pictures. Here you can see that I'm choosing to use 90% of the best pictures and stack them. I typically use about 90%, but on this one we're going to go ahead and use 100%, as I've already gone through them all and chosen which ones are good and which ones are not. Then we're going to click on Advanced, come over to Compute the number of detected stars, and this is going to tell us how many stars Deep Sky Stacker is using in order to align your images. If you have this number too low, what you can find is it is detecting more stars than you need, so 806, and it's going to try to stack your image for each of those stars and align it, and that can just slow things down. So again, I like to keep mine around 50. That's 40. We'll just drop it down a little and get close to 50. There we go, we're back at 50. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. We're going to use the recommended settings, so I'm just going to click recommended settings, see if anything comes out. You can see some have multiple options. I'm going to go ahead and just use the defaults for everything. Click OK, and then I'm going to come over here. You can see that we're using 35 frames at 2 hours and 55 minutes of capture time, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit OK again. What that's going to do is it's going to go ahead and start processing all of those frames for us. Depending on how many frames you have, it can take anywhere from 10 minutes to over an hour, depending on the number of frames and your processing power. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and let this run in the background, and once it's done, I'll come back and we'll take a look at the stacked image. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to work on Siril. Siril is a free program, and you can check out the description for a link to be able to download it. But what we want to do is go ahead and open up our file. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the location it gets saved. When you're working in Deep Sky Stacker, it is going to save in the location of where your light frames are saved. You can see I've run Deep Sky Stacker a couple times, so the latest save is going to be the autosave 003.tiff. I'm going to go ahead and click it and choose open, and inside of Siril it's going to come over in red, green, blue, and then RGB. So if we click RGB, we can see all the different frames or colors combined. And the first step we want to do is go ahead and come over to our histograms and choose histogram. And this is going to show us some of the areas where we have some stacking artifacts. So you can see where the stack did not overlap and it put those together. So we're going to come over to either red, green, or blue, and that's going to allow us to drag a box in the area to kind of crop that information out. So I'm going to go ahead and choose crop, and now that information is no longer there, and when we look at it, you can see the information is not there anymore, and we're going to go ahead and set this back to auto stretch. Now you can see that we're in this screen, and what we want to do is go ahead and come in here, and we're going to try to get rid of some of that gradation. So you can see a little bit of gradation here. We'll flip through the channels. It's not too bad, so it looks like it actually did pretty well, but we're going to try to go ahead and get rid of any of the rest of the gradation. And we're going to go to background extraction. We're going to tell it to compute the background. We're going to tell it to generate. And if we come over into blue, we can take out some of the areas. So in red, if we try, or RGB, if we try, it's going to not allow us to select anything. That's because the RGB tab is for visualization only. So we'll click over to blue, and I know there's some nebulosity around here, so I'm just going to right click on these, try to remove them. So we'll just come through here, remove. And then once we're happy with where our nebulization is, we're going to do compute background. And you can see now our nebulosity is popping quite a bit more off that background. And if we click over to RGB, let's do that one more time, I'm sorry. Background extraction, blue, generate, and what you'll want to do is go ahead and click apply. So we're clicking through here where our nebulosity is, because we do not want our background targets on the nebulosity. We're going to click on compute background, and you want to apply it. And now when we click on RGB, you can see that it's popping much more. The next thing we want to do is we want to go to color calibration, photometric color calibration. And what this is going to do is it's actually going to look at the stars in the area and create the image with a color palette based on what the scientific star colors are. So we're going to search, we're going to choose Trifid, and we're going to click OK. It takes a moment for it to search the stars and register them. There we go. It's still computing. We'll just give that another minute. You can see the progress here on the bottom. Okay, so now that that's taken place, we'll go ahead and close this. We don't want to hit OK again, otherwise it'll rerun it. So we'll go ahead and hit close. And now we can go back and forward, and it'll show the changes that it made. There we go. So back and forward, and we can see how much of a difference it's made in our colors. The next item that we'll do is we'll go ahead and remove any green noise. You just choose it, hit apply, and you can see how everything just lost a little bit of that green noise. And from here, I'm feeling like we want to be a little bit tighter. That's going to help us with some of these dust motes that didn't get taken care of by the flats. Next time we'll get better flats on this one instead of using flats from a day or two later. But what we'll do is we'll just go to our blue. We'll kind of frame this up. You'll see you can left click and move the box. I'm going to kind of center it here. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. we'll crop, and we might actually just undo that and go a little bit more. So maybe about like that, and crop. There we go. Actually, let's do that one more time. It's always hard getting the right area that you want to crop, but the nice thing is the undo and redo. It's fairly quick and responsive here in Siril. Go back to here. So that is giving us quite a good area. And what we'll now do is go back to linear. So we're gonna lose our image, but that's okay because we were just using the system to view our auto stretch, and now we're actually going to apply it. So we're going to go to linear, we're going to open our histogram, and then we're going to click auto stretch right here, and then we're going to click apply. Now if you feel some of the areas too bright or not bright enough, you can update here, and usually I do like to come in and just darken that background a little because that helps the nebulas to come out a bit better. We'll apply that, close, so we can look at what it was before on auto stretch, then what it is, and I think that's reading quite a bit better. And then the last thing we'll do is we'll go ahead and edit the saturation, and we're going to go ahead and give it a decent boost here. So that is really helping that pop quite a bit. So we will apply that. Then to save this, we're going to right click, choose save RGB image to TIFF. I save mine as 16-bit simply because I find it a little easier to work with. I know some people like to work at 32-bit all the way through the process, but I do mine at 16-bit. I'm going to go ahead and just call it Siril M20 tutorial. We'll save that. And then the next step is going to be opening this in Topaz Denoise so that we can work on getting rid of some of the noise that we're seeing in here. Okay, and the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and open the image in Topaz Denoise AI. This is a program that allows or uses artificial intelligence to remove noise. I'm going to go ahead and browse to our image, which is Siril M20 tutorial. Open it. And we're going to go ahead and let it run. Okay. Now you can see all that noise kind of disappearing. And there's quite a bit of it, but you can definitely see over here how it cleans up the image considerably. And what I like to do is go ahead and up here, click on comparison view, and we're going to let it go through all the different variations. That way we can look to see if there is one that we find gives us a better noise removal without adding too many artifacts. You can kind of see in here how it's adding some wavy lines. So what we want to do is try to remove the noise without adding extra details or information. You can see we've got a little bit of the star information on all these smaller stars. That could be artifacts from the denoise or just a little bit off on the tracking. It looks like all of them are giving us just a little bit of artifacts. Some of that could be just the stretching as well. Overall though, I do think the low light version is giving us the best image by removing noise but without adding too many artifacts. So we'll just go ahead and do a split view again one more time. I like to zoom out just to make sure that we're not getting any artifacts anywhere else. That's updated now, so we'll just kind of go back and forth a little bit. You can see, especially here in the blue and the nebula, how much that just cleans the image up. And if you've not purchased Topaz Denoise, it's definitely worth the try. I believe they have a trial as well, but for my images it has come in a long ways in helping just smooth things out, create a better, more readable image, especially here in the hotter states where your camera just can't cool as much as you'd like it to. So with the low light chosen, I'm going to go ahead and click Save Image. There's not really a lot of work that you have to do with Topaz Denoise. That's another reason I like using it. You open the image, go through different AI models, see which one you like the most that's not causing any extra artifacts, and then you save the image, and then we'll open it in Photoshop. Okay, so I have opened the image in Photoshop, and the first thing that we'll want to do is go ahead and get rid of the areas with the dust motes that we weren't able to get rid of with the flat frames. You can see a little bit here, you got the donut here, little donut here. There might be a little bit right here as well. So what we're going to do is get rid of those. We're going to want to create a new layer, and we're going to want to choose soft light. And what this is going to do is it's going to create a new layer for us to work on, where we're going to be painting white. Now with that, we do want to choose the opacity, bring it down, and we'll just work up a little bit of a layer at a time. We're going to decrease our brush size ever so slightly. So for white, that'll brighten the area just a little bit. So you can see that brightened it, and that's a little bit too much. So you can use Control-Z to undo and redo. And we can see that's just a little too much. So we're going to go ahead and lower that opacity probably down to 10. Try that again. And now that we're looking at it, that's looking pretty good. We might just go a little bit further down. That way we can kind of build up in some areas. So that looks pretty good. We'll just give it a little bit more there. You can also turn the layer on and off to get a good idea. So that's looking pretty good. We'll come in over here a little, brighten, and all I'm doing is just kind of left clicking a little bit in this area to try to get that little bit of donut to go away, and we'll increase our brush size just a little bit. So all we're doing is kind of brightening some areas, and then we will go ahead and darken some. So you can either click here to switch from white to black, or you can use the X key. So X is going to just darken it ever so slightly. We've got this mote here. We're gonna just kind of go through here, darken it a little, and you can see how that is kind of blending back in with the background again. And we can edit that just a little bit. And all we want to do is kind of smooth out those gradations a little. You can play with your brush size, bring them in and out a little, brighten those areas a little. So just come in and out. And if you start to notice it's a little too much, just click on the X to go back to dark and smooth it out some. And that's all we're doing to work on those donut shapes. And we can't always get them perfect, but we can work on just distorting them enough so that they aren't as blatant as they were. So this one here at the bottom is starting to look pretty good. We're just gonna kind of get a little extra there, so that donut's starting to disappear. We're gonna come in, brighten this a little bit more. And again, we're just slowly working on getting those donuts to be anything but a donut. So I think I like kind of where that's headed. The next thing that I typically like to do is we can combine our layers. So if you click and control click the other one and drag them to the new layer panel, it'll create copies. You can then right click, go merge layers. So now we have a copy of those. And Photoshop typically does a pretty good job of auto toning, auto contrast, auto coloring. Well, auto color can give you some interesting colors, so typically avoid that. But auto contrast can really just make your image pop all of a sudden. So that was without the auto contrast. That's with the auto contrast. And then I like to click on the eyedropper, bring up our information panel, and then kind of just come through here. And what we want to do is here in the RGB, we don't want anything going to all 0. Because when it's all 0, that means it's pure black and you've lost a lot of your information. So I like to kind of come through here, make sure nothing's on all 0. And if it is, what you can do is you can kind of drop the opacity a little to bring in some of that of the bottom layers. So that adds some of that gray and nebulosity back into your image, because Photoshop does like to over contrast sometimes. So with this, we're still getting some of those nice deep blacks from the dust that's blocking the light, but we're also keeping some of that nebulosity. And with that, I think we've got a pretty good final image. The other thing you can do is you can take a look at your cropping if you want to crop your image a little bit differently. I think right about there is looking pretty good. We can expand that just a little, recrop, and all right, and I think we've got our final image here. If you haven't already, go ahead and like, subscribe, and put a comment there in the comments below. We appreciate any feedback that you have, and appreciate you taking a look and spending the time with us to go through this tutorial. For the frames, data frames for this image, go ahead and click in the description and go to the Patreon, and all that information will be available for you in our Patreon. Thank you.